Welcome to another episode of the ASQ podcast, where we focus on life, leadership, and culture. Today, we're peeling back the layers of self-doubt that hold us back from truly embracing who we are. Have you ever questioned your path or felt like an imposter in your own life? Join us as we explore how to silence those doubts and boldly step into your authentic essence. How are you today?
I am good. It's been a good day today.
Has it?
Yeah, a lot of good.
It's been a good day for me too.
Yeah. It's been a lot of great things happening. Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely a lot of good things happening.
And for most of the stuff that I do is talk all day, so I like talking.
I know.
Yes, I know you do, but it's funny because
I know that.
we went to an event recently, and one of the guys that I work with, he was like, "Wow, I've never seen you be so quiet before." And he's like, "Yeah, my wife's around, so I don't really get to talk. That's why you always see me talking all the time."
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's pretty funny.
That is funny.
I think so. Anyways.
Whatever. Not even going to go there.
Yeah.
So today, we're talking about one of my least favorite subjects.
Okay. Why is that at least?
I think it's a least favorite just because it's something that I deal with a lot, and I think that we all do. I'm not an outlier.
Yeah.
But it's something that I struggle with, self-doubt and how it affects my perception, my self-perception, is something that is really, sort of a powerful, I don't want to say demon, but just that dragon in my life. That's a good way to say it, right? And it really is.
You do listen to me.
As much as you talk, I have no choice but to listen to you.
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
Jabs at
I'm
each
just
other.
kidding. I'm kidding.
No,
Okay, I take it back.
It's all
Take it
good.
back.
No,
listen.
it's all good. It's all good. Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's fine.
Anyway, yes, I do listen to you. And I think that's a better word to use is dragon, because I think that that's something that, it affects everybody. Some people experience it more deeply than other people, and some people are over that hill of, combating it, which is what we're talking about today. And I'm a work in progress. And I think that everybody's always going to have moments where self-doubt arises, but today that's what we're talking about. And I think that we have a lot to share. And so let's get into the meat and bones of this episode. Right?
Yes.
All right. So first I want to start with sharing a quote, which I thought was really powerful. And this is a quote by Susie Kasem. I might have butchered the last name, but Susie Kasem. Doubt kills more dreams than failure ever will. Isn't that powerful?
Yeah. It's a big, it's a big scale in that dragon, Yeah. It really is. Because you and we're going to get into the sources of it, how that comes from and all that stuff. But when you begin to question who you are, doubt your capabilities, and it comes from the unknown, right? Sometimes we go into the unknown without knowing exactly what the outcome will be, particularly when we're referencing our future based on previous experiences. So that also becomes challenging. And then we have to keep into consideration that our environment tends to reinforce certain things that we believe, because that's what we're looking for. That's what we're going to get. What we are going to get. Right. So it's a combination of that. So that's why it's a big challenge.
Very much so.
To kill this particular aspect of the dragon.
Yeah, it really is. It's challenging. Yeah. I know for me lately, it's been a real struggle because I've started a new position, and it's more challenging. And so of course when there's more challenges, and it's like you said, like the fear of the unknown, you have more you question your abilities. Correct. You know what I mean? You really do. And even with the things that we do together with A Soul's Quest, ASQ, it's sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't know if I could do that. But it creeps in, and it really has a way of really changing your whole mood.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And that's
course.
the part that really throws you off, because you're just like, how do I come back now from I was feeling good and now I'm feeling this way, and now how do I get back to that place where I'm feeling mostly confident?
Exactly, yeah.
So I think that it's a powerful emotion, and it's definitely. I'm like thinking about all the stuff that I don't want to say it now, but all the stuff that I'm doing to relieve that aspect or to calm that dragon, sort of putting the, the smoke when, with bees, you put the smoke. I'm doing that with the dragon. I guess I don't have another analogy, but
anyway. But it's good. It's good to the way that you're saying it, right? It's good to understand the pain points that come with that, right? Because it is something that is so deeply ingrained in us. Yeah. Particularly when you're having like life changes, when things are very uncertain.
Yeah, like you said, fear of the unknown.
Yeah, when things are uncertain, when who we thought we were is challenged.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. When those things happen, it's like, oh, what the?
Yeah, it throws you off balance.
It throws you off.
It really does.
Right?
Yeah.
It throws you off. It throws you off balance. It makes you question, in reality, who you are in respect to what's happening.
Right.
So it's a natural thing that happens. Right. But we haven't really fully, I think, at least on really you go in your own individual quest and start learning things about yourself.
Oh, yeah.
And putting yourself in situations to expand on the things that you are. That's when you begin to realize, oh, okay. And I don't think everybody's exempt from this. Even very successful people that are successful now, how to overcome those doubts, because there's always that thing in the back of our minds for self-preservation. It's one of those things that are one of our impulses in life. It's that, right?
Yeah.
To preserve ourselves, to protect ourselves from any type of harm, right? So it's kind of like a mixture of that,
right?
Because it's not just that I'm not good enough. It's like, or what I'm capable of. It's like, will this go against my well-being and my protection? But feeling well-being and protected is kind of like a mechanism from preventing you from growing.
Right. It's interesting because we're going to talk about that soon. So let's not go anymore. Let's start by, let's unpack self-doubt, and how and the impact that it has on our self-perception. Like I kind of want to talk about that because I think sometimes people get really, really angry because let me speak from, I'm going to say things in I statements. See, I listen to you. I know that I have gotten angry when I have self-doubt creeping in. I get like frustrated. I get angry. I get confused. I like once the self-doubt creeps in, a whole bunch of other stuff comes in. Yeah. And I think it's important to talk about like what are those, like you said, the common sources of this experience. Yeah. It's an experience.
I mean, the more foundational aspect of it, right? It's really like your upbringing, childhood experiences, and like social conditioning, right? When you think about, a child growing up, and most of my life I worked with young people, and I worked with young adults, right, and adults, and you could see that this, if you follow it back enough, it's that idea of being told you didn't do it good enough, right? That's not how you do it. You could have done better. Yeah. You didn't try hard enough. So you got that constant pressure, right? And in addition to that, and I hate to keep bashing the education system, right? But the education system is like, you pass or you failed, right? And then you see that the recognition only goes to a certain group of people. But even with them, they still having self-doubts, right? Yeah, so, for sure. So our conditioning, our experience from upbringing in a certain society or with certain expectations, right?
And also culture.
Culture, that has a lot to do with the way that we see ourselves in terms of whether or not we're capable. Right. Whether or not we are enough to be able to take on a task. Right. So that foundationally is one of the biggest culprits when it comes to that. Right. I think on top of that, you have past failures and past mistakes. Right. I know that I've struggled with that with both of these aspects. Growing up and with my experiences and things like that, adverse experiences. But then consequently making mistakes that I feel like I should be at a different place in many aspects. You begin to doubt whether you're capable. You begin to doubt those things, right? Because we don't look, or we are not trained as young people to look at mistakes as learning experiences, right?
Not at all.
If you think about it.
Yeah, not
right?
at all.
We are trained that if you get a B or an A, you're a success. If you get a C, you're a failure. But nobody talks about the way that you improved. Even if you make a mistake in life, it's like you're condemned by that. And I always joke around. It's like, Aki food or blowfish, right? They're poisonous foods, right? Well, how did we find out that they're poisonous? Well, somebody had to eat it, and somebody had to learn from that mistake, right? We don't have to be as drastic as that, but the idea of making a mistake, it's figuring out a way of looking at things differently. Right? And figuring out different ways to look at it. But it's hard because then the big thing is culture and society pits us against one another. So we'll begin to compare. And we begin to see like this illusion of what a successful life looks like. And if we don't look like that, or if we haven't achieved that level of quote unquote success or appearance-wise, right? Because you got to look past the facade of things.
Right, because on social media, some things are what they are, but some things are just not what they appear.
And it's not just in social media. Social media is just
social media, TV.
It's a lie. Social media, TV is just another lens to look at stuff, because nobody really compares on a regular basis to people on TV, on social media. We compare ourselves with the Joneses. Let's be quite honest, right?
Yeah,
so
that's true.
Most of us
with our immediate surroundings.
Our immediate surroundings,
yeah,
right?
That's true.
So I don't really pay too much attention to the social media or the TV argument, because that's not really a real comparison to us. It's the Joneses that are next to us.
Right.
It's the people that are in our surroundings.
Yeah,
those are the ones that we don't want to acknowledge deep down inside that, I want to be her. I don't we don't want to acknowledge that. But the real comparison comes from that, because that person has that. And then later on, you see the other person next to it get the same thing, right? I kind of find it hilarious now, because that's now how I operate in terms of comparison. But when you see it, you can start navigating to that. Right. And seeing how it's like a layer stack of it. Right. And then after that, you have the negative feedback loop in your mind. Well, I'm not there. I'm not this. I should have did this. I went to school for this. Why am I not doing that? I pay so much money for this. Why am I not doing this? So you start going in that feedback loop, which brings you more and more and more into the depths of darkness and self-doubt and confusion and the low self-esteem. And it just goes on from there. Yeah.
I will say that's one that's a very relatable one for me. Like, I really struggle with that, because I went all the way with my education. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And, for years it was just poo-pooed on, you know what I mean? It mattered, but at the end of the day, it didn't really matter. You know what I mean? And that was just like, that was a really, what do you call it? Down. What am I missing the word?
No.
A dark place for me, because I was like, I worked so hard. I did everything I was supposed to do. I didn't buy my PhD. I earned it. I did everything right, and those were dark times. I did a lot of crying,
let's deconstruct that, right? Right? Because that feeling that you feel right now, that's like, oh my God, the self-doubt, right? Number one, the fact that it was accomplished says a ton, right? But on the flip side, actually, I've been having to use this analogy all week with, I don't know why, a coin. A coin has two sides. You see that one side, right? I'm not good enough, even though I did all this, I did all that. But on the flip side, when we gain perspective, right? And when we, and this is one of the things that we talk about, in ASQ overall, is to gain a perspective, right? So on the opposite side, the perspective is that wasn't the right place for you,
right?
But it doesn't feel like that, right? Because again, even in that place, and let's be honest, will you have the freedom and the flexibility to express and say and do the things that you want to express and do?
No,
right? So that's why it's so important to decompress these perceptions of failure and mistakes and look at it from different viewpoints.
Yeah.
Right. Because
I think I know what you're saying, because I've been going through this process, I think, but it's very difficult. And I know that what you're doing is you're alluding to what we're going to be talking about later, which is like strategies and things that you can implement. But the darkness that you feel in those moments is the part that, it's like being in quicksand. How do you get out of that? And I know, again, we're going to talk about that, but it's a really dark place to be in.
It is. And this is all analogous to the abyss, right? In the hero's journey, being in the abyss, right? And being dismembered, because literally that's how it feels like. It's a death, right? It's a death. Now, again, two sides of the same coin. Is death a good thing or a bad thing?
In my case, it ended up being the best thing that could have happened to me.
Without death, we can never understand what life is, and vice versa. Right. So, and we died, and again, that death, symbolically speaking, is not a physical death; it's a psychological death, and that psychological death is necessary for us to become more authentic.
I think this is such an important thing to talk about, and I'm glad you brought it up, because it wasn't necessarily part of what we discussed when we were talking about this episode, right? But that in and of itself, I think that goes back to the fundamentals of ASQ, right? The fundamentals of what we do, the hero's journey, and the things that we talk about with, with our PEP framework and all these different things, because you have to be able to understand that cycle. Or I'm doing it backwards, but you know what I mean? Yep. The cycle, in order to be able to connect the dots to overcome these types of dragons, to slay these dragons.
Yes, I'm going to disagree with just one thing that you said. No, it's just one thing.
Okay.
It's not understanding it. It's experiencing it.
No, it's experience. No, I get it.
That's the only thing.
But I mean, what I mean by that is understanding it, but also understanding that it is an experience.
Yes. So
that's what I mean by that. So understanding it, meaning I'm supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be going through this. I accept where I'm at. I'm going to go through this and have this experience and come out on the other side of the hero's journey.
Nothing that has been worthwhile in the history of humankind.
This is a quote.
No, it's not.
I thought it was a quote.
Yeah,
it sounded
it's like I'm freestyling. I'm freestyling.
That was good. Go
ahead,
freestyle.
Yeah, I don't have that type of skills.
Go ahead. No, that was pretty good though.
Our buddy Dorian does, but I don't. But anyways, in the history of humankind, right? This is the threshold in which creation truly takes place and evolution takes place, right? Because it's that moment of darkness, that moment of that pit. Right? When our soul resides, I got to keep moving. I got to go through this.
Yeah.
Right? That's why the hero is such an important and powerful archetype, because not everybody could do it.
Right.
And I don't mean everybody has the potential and the capability of doing it. But when we get caught up on comparisons, stuck in the sand, in the quicksand of our past, in the quicksand of expectations that other people, when we start losing the battle against that dragon, this was when we stop evolving. And consequently, this is when we stop positively affecting those around us. Right. Now, I'm saying this now because, I feel personally that I came out of it.
Right.
Not unscathed.
No.
A little fucked up, but I came out of it on the other side, right? Yeah. And I have a better way of understanding it. Maybe I have a better way of presenting it and explaining it, because I know how it feels like, right? And I tell everybody that I work with, right? Because I work with a lot of trauma survivors, right? That I don't understand your experience, right? And you will never be able to understand my experiences. But the common denominator of how that feels, it's universal. That's why when you read mythology, when you read all these heroic stories, they all have the same connotations. And they denote the same thing. Right? But ultimately, it's like you have to find it within yourself, to overcome it. Right? And that there are guides, and that's kind of like the way that we're positioning ourselves, right? As people that are, for instance, you now are recognizing it and going through it. I've gone through it. Doesn't make me better. Doesn't make me I don't think that I'm better than anybody. I tell people all the time, the only difference between you and I, with the younger people that I worked with, it's just I'm just older than you are, so I've been around a little bit longer, number one. And the people that are around my age is just psychologically speaking, I already ate a lot of it. You're just starting to taste it. And that's the only difference. So, from our standpoint, it's really being like a guide because we understand what that feels like. And then consequently, be a creator. Create something.
Right.
I'm not saying like this, just saying whatever comes to you. And that's something that you have to find. Like we're working on finding.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's true. So let's talk about, again, I'm glad that we talked about that because it's always like this, everything that we do is so connected to, each other or each thing. So what about identifying like those triggers that cause us to get to that place and the challenge, like the patterns that start to happen that we can sort of start to recognize. I guess this is the recognition part of this show that I want to talk about.
Yeah. There's two things, emotions and the talk in your mind.
The noise,
the chatter.
The chatter. Didn't you read a book about chatter?
Yes.
That was what it was about?
Yes. It's an amazing book about how that chatter works.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I don't remember his name exactly right now, but it's an amazing book. In terms of,
you can link it.
Yeah, I can link
so
it.
People,
I forgot his name. It's gonna come to me. Watch. But there's those two things. One, the chatter. So what the chatter does is like your mind, the way that it works, it's like a recorder. Your subconscious. There's a reason why we use the term memory, right?
Right.
Because your subconscious is like a memory recording device. So if you can't figure out a way to influence it, it's just going to keep saying the same things over and over again.
Right. So if you receive negative feedback and criticism,
it's just going to keep
playing out over that and over and over that way. Okay.
Exactly. So that's one thing that right away you begin because you start saying, I'm not good enough. Oh my God, I don't feel. And consequently, the second most powerful thing is your emotions.
Right.
Right. So for me, right, there's a certain emotions. When I'm anxious, it's right here. I feel it. Right. When I'm angry, it's right here. My ears get hot, right?
I know. And feel my ears; they're hot.
And sometimes I tremble a little bit, when I'm nervous or when I'm scared, or I blob, So your emotions and they manifest in your body, right? And if you stop and you start thinking about it, it's like, where do I feel this stuff? Some part of your body feels that tension, right? So you have to be able to recognize those things. Number one, that the way that you're talking manifests in a feeling in your body somewhere. Okay. And your emotions come from there because there is that connection, right? Our minds are the most powerful things. And I'm just beginning to learn about all this stuff. Like I understand conceptually, like how Carl Jung and understand the different archetypes and the components of your conscious self, with the self, animus conscious, shadow, subconscious, persona, and ego. I have a good conceptually understanding of it, but to be able to see it within yourself and how those things, if you're not aligned, it's different, right?
It's very different.
It's very different, right?
It's people talk about that all the time. And I don't know where I was going with this, but they say, I have a good understing of it, but then they don't apply it to themselves.
You can't see it to yourself. Right. So when you see the different aspects of you manifesting, and feeling it and recognizing it.
It's like that's recognizing your shadow.
Yeah. And your emotions are such a powerful thing that the more you understand them, the more you understand the mental reason why they're coming about, the more you start beginning to change. And the more you have the capability of beginning to tame that dragon. Right. So that's really, to answer your question, that's really two of the main things, two of the main sources of how to understand, right, and understand those two things, right. The way you're thinking.
Mostly it's a mind and a physical.
The way you're thinking and the emotions that come from that.
And I would agree 100% on that because I sometimes will feel like, sometimes I cry. Sometimes I almost feel like my blood pressure rising and I feel I'm like, oh, I need to chill out. I need to walk away, whatever. And I notice that I can't just sit. I need to kind of move around or, whatever. So I can see that. Yep. So let me ask you this, because I think that people are kind of, okay, what do you do? What do you do?
Yep.
and I want to talk about this kind of like from a personal perspective, because this is what we really do and this is what we're all about, right?
Yep.
Is the strategies to tame self-doubt and allow us to understand how it's affecting us and what are those strategies? Like what are they like what for you? Because you've gone through this much longer than I have, although I think I've always felt self-doubt. I just don't think that I acknowledged it as much as I have recently. In my midlife.
Yeah, in your midlife, yeah. Well, what happens a lot of the times, right? Because this is a good point that you mentioned about midlife, right? Most of our lives, until around midlife, we are responsive.
What do you mean?
I mean responsive because think about the way that our lives are structured, right? We're born into a family of none of our choosing. Okay. We learn those values. We learn those things, good or bad.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We typically belong to a culture, right?
Yep.
And that culture has a certain set of beliefs, a certain set of principles, and so forth and so on, right? You go through an education system, right? In that education system, you are there to learn, but also to work towards fulfilling a social contract. Right. Mm-hmm. Let's not get it twisted. You go to school, right? Because eventually you want to become a productive citizen, right? You need to play a function in society somehow.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what we are trained. Now, I'm not passing judgment on that. It is important to play a role in our society.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. But what happens as you continue to that? Right, in primarily like when you're in your mid 30s and you start getting in your 40s, and then you start kind of like feeling this thing like, is this it? Is this what it's all about? That's it, right? And there's that pit of despair, like holy shit,
what the fuck am I doing here?
What is this?
Yeah.
So people become resentful, right? So you do a couple of things.
Or they go out and buy fancy cars.
Or they go out. No.
It's not. Again, I'm not making fun. I'm just saying.
It's not a judgment. It's like, how do you feel?
People respond.
How do you get a sense of being alive?
Yeah.
When you start realizing that these things that were structured and they were outside of your being no longer give you that same feeling.
Yeah.
See, it's not again, it's easy to pass judgment on society. It's very easy to pass judgment on society. It's easy to pass judgment on culture. That's easy pickings. That's very easy pickings, right? Yeah. It's not very complicated.
Right.
But, and that's the thing, right? When we get to that point that is like that void, that despair, that the functions that we play in our society no longer fits us. Like, wait a minute, my kids are gone. So what about now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute.
And we've talked about that. Yeah.
Yeah. But this is a natural psychological dissolution.
Right.
Right. So then what then? Right. Now you have to go into something more deep. If you choose to, not that you have to, you know.
Should you choose to accept this?
Should you choose to. Here, red pill, blue pill.
Red pill, blue pill.
We can only show you the truth. Right. So when you start going on your quest to identify that authentic essence of who you are from that cosmic point of view, from the universal point of view, and you start truly identifying what is that essence, then things begin to change. Right? Now, I know that this is the process that you're starting to do.
It is. And so there are a few elements in there that you alluded to earlier, and I didn't really want to enhance on that because now we're at that stage. You had, I don't remember exactly how you said it, but you were talking about basically being vulnerable.
Yes.
And one of the things that you have to do is you have to be vulnerable vulnerable enough, almost like to expose what's happening. Right. Yeah. And that's sometimes difficult because, like, for example, in our relationship, let's just talk from a personal perspective. I see myself as a very headstrong individual. I make things function. And
practical.
We agree with this, right? Like I take care of the house. I make sure things are done. I get things ordered. I do this, I do that, and make sure the house is clean, and I do things like that, right? And I take a lot of, I didn't say you don't clean.
Okay,
you just helped me clean the house on like last weekend. It was really amazing. Thank you so much. I needed your muscles.
Clean it better than you do, but that's okay. But go ahead. Sorry, I digress.
You did. But I think that one of the things that, like that's my role. I was a mom, my kids came to me for everything, or our kids came to me for everything. Now help me with this, help me with that. And I delivered, and I was useful.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And then as I got into that stage where we became empty nesters, as much as I was like, this is awesome, I love this. We can walk around naked now, just throw the bra off when I get home, do this, do that, or go to the bathroom with the door open. Like all the things that you're not able to do when you have children in the house or kids in the house. So that's all great. But there's always that thing that's missing, that you're not needed anymore. And I do it with air quotes, because we're still needed.
Yep.
And those are things that you really have to be open to examining.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, you have to expose yourself and become vulnerable to those things. Yeah. Right. And that is so difficult when you want to have that outer exterior be perceived as, man, she's strong. She's, she gets through anything. She does this, she does that. And oh my God, when inside I'm just this child that's crying and begging to get out. And I have now changed that about myself. Thus, exposing my vulnerabilities, because that's what I talk about. I talk about that in my book. We talk about that as a couple. We talk about that with our trainings and our public speaking. Your public speaking. I don't do no public speaking now yet. Things like that. It's really an important thing. And I think it begins with that you have to be able to get that. I know the hero's journey and all that, but part of that is being vulnerable.
And here's the thing, right? I when you were saying all that stuff, I was thinking about the Matrix Revolutions, the third one where Neo is talking to when he's stuck in the subway and he's talking to those two people and the little girl.
Oh yeah,
right?
The little girl, yeah.
And they're trying to get her out, right? Because she doesn't serve a function in the Matrix.
In the Matrix, right?
But they love her They love their daughter, right? So again, this is what I'm talking about, your essence, right? It's not the function. There's something deeper, something more universal about who you are as a being that needs to be discovered, that needs to be rediscovered, right?
Right.
It's like I was telling someone, and I don't know why I always quote like this, but I was telling someone last week about Nika Costa, right? There's nothing I don't know, just hasn't come to me yet.
That was me.
I'm only trying to remember what we chose to forget, right?
Yeah.
So again, it's like I don't believe that society is evil or wrong, right? There's things that need to change and evolve. But within society is a limited construct created by us. I mean, if you look at the rise of civilizations, we were nomads, right? Until the cultural revolution, the agricultural revolution took place, and then we created this thing to share goods and services and safety. But that thing sometimes becomes too strong, and it becomes self-defining, and it prevents us from discovering the potential of what we could be. But within that structure, we need to rediscover that essence in order to create and expand what the culture could be, right? But if we have doubts in ourselves, if we stay in that pit, right, and we choose not to see with clarity, right, that we fulfill functions for a certain time, right? But there's also that aspect of us that craves creativity, that craves to evolve, right?
Yeah, and we just don't know that, and that's what you're talking about.
We do know it. We feel it.
We feel it,
but we're afraid.
Well, and but I would also say afraid. Yes, fear is an aspect of it, but I would also argue and push back on that, because I think that sometimes you don't think that you have that capacity or that potential. I don't think that. I just said, I'm not the public speaker here yet.
Yeah.
Because I don't, in my mind, I'm like, stand in front of an audience of 100 people. Are you insane? I've talked in front of 50 people, maybe a little more. That's my limit. I've done that.
Yeah.
In fact, I've talked to a bigger crowd than that. So, I choose to forget that.
Yeah.
I choose to forget that I've done that. And the thing is that I think that some people don't know they have that capacity.
Yeah.
It's there. It's always been there. And that's the idea of rediscovering your authentic essence.
Exactly.
Because it is there.
Yes.
And there is that feeling, because I've felt that. You know what I mean? I know I have felt that. And I do now. I feel it now.
I mean, like, one of my favorite, one of my favorite movies of all time is The Legend of Bagger Vance, right? And it's like, that essence get caught up in the could-haves and should-haves and would-haves of life,
yes.
right? On the mistakes of the past, of the expectations of the people around us, and all that, right? It gets lost in all that.
It does. In the noise.
In the noise of it all, right? Yeah. It really does, right? Yeah. And then we start thinking comparisons that creativity or self-expression is only the domain of artists, right? Of people that create stuff. It's not.
It's for the select few.
But it's for the select few,
Right. And it's not.
And it's not. Right. So when you start shifting perspective and truly reflecting, right? Because and we're going to get into the tools that we use, right? In order to really, when you really start reflecting at the universality of life, right? And you step back far enough and you start seeing things differently, you really start realizing that, you know what? If I stand up in front of 100 people, and Wayne Dyer said this, 100 people will have 100 different perceptions of me, right? Sometimes I do things, right? And people say, oh, I try hard. Like, oh, you always got to, go extra. Have you seen it? People say, why does he have to do it? Why, I don't have to try hard. Just me, right? And it took me a long time to accept that. And I still struggle with that, right? Yeah, I'm getting much better and I'm caring less, right? But it's still sometimes a struggle to beat.
Right.
To be authentic, to live from that point. Because sometimes people say, well, why are you doing this? Why are you outshining? And I'm just like, well, I'm just doing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm not perfect. I'm going to make mistakes and all that stuff, right? But again, this is why it gets so, because in the construct of a society where people have the expectations of how things should be, when you start living authentically, that becomes like Neo.
Yeah. Yeah.
The anomaly, right? And then more importantly, because this is one of the things that I have to warn people, the quest isn't a lone thing.
Yes, it is indeed.
And there's people that are going to be there to help you.
Yeah.
But ultimately, like Morpheus said, there's the door, but you're the one that has to walk through it.
Yeah.
You have to walk through it. And that's the part that is challenging for us to accept, because again, we don't want to be alone. Self-preservation is one of those things that are motivate us. And one of those other things that motivate us, right, is the need for social connection.
Yeah, and I would say, just as a disclaimer, that when you do enter into this phase of wanting and desiring so much, like I do, to connect with my authentic essence and live from that point of view, it is very lonely. We have lost people in our life as a result of, whether it was through you or me, because we're a couple, because of you speaking from your authentic essence, and standing firm on that, and me being a collateral damage, or in my case, I have you, and so I feel very supportive mostly, because I experience things differently. We have different paths and different feelings and emotions, and so.
And different points of references as to who we are. Right.
Yep. And I will say that, I just had an experience recently where I was just like, I just was crying because I was like, I fucking give up. I'm just done. And I got my shit together because I'm getting in a better place. And I reflected on, I did my things, which we're going to get into, but I don't know where I was going with that. That's the third time I've done that.
No, but
I think what's important is to understand that once you choose to embark on this quest of discovering rediscovering your authentic essence, just know that if you have a support system, that's wonderful, but know that it can be lonely.
The most powerful,
because not everybody wants to see you do that.
Listen, there's a reason why movies and storytelling always have that one character, and that one character goes through hell and back by itself.
Yeah, that's true.
There is no story of anyone. I have a picture back here of like Nelson Mandela and Gandhi and all that stuff, right? Mandela had to do his 25 years by himself.
Yes, he did.
Right? It's like there is something about embarking on your own individual quest that is the most heroic thing that you could do for yourself.
Absolutely.
Right? And again, it's like I personally, I don't consider myself a hero for anybody, but like it's my life, and I'm trying to make sense of it. And for better or worse, for the friends that judge me because they never understood me, for the friends that love me and accept me for who I am, for the people that I have helped and the people that have been my friends or my enemies or my adversaries or whatever. Yeah. You know, it's like if I'm still here and I'm willing to learn and stuff, you know, that stands for something for me, right? Yeah. And I could say that now. 4 years ago, I wasn't able to say that. I will tell you that. Yeah. I will tell you that much. I wouldn't have been able, but I had to go through it, right? So it is lonely, but it is also once you start getting through it and you start learning and you start appreciating things, right? And then you cry and then you get up and then you cry again and then you get up again.
Dust your knees
and then you start doing little things to make you that cater to that essence. Right. Then you start seeing things are much lighter.
So I'm glad you said that. I love how you just make this cadence of this episode.
But you see this, right? This is one of the things that happen, right? Because I don't have to try hard, right? Because I understand it now. I have the experience of it,
right?
And I have the experience. It's like I was talking to a guy today. His name is Carmine, and he owns a bagel shop here locally. And he has several, and we were talking for like an hour.
Really?
Him and I, yeah. And he was telling me about, and I was like, well, how do you get into bagels and stuff like that? And he was like, I went and I applied for this job, and this guy showed me, and I said to him, hey, listen, can I just try it? Because I'm going to try to do it, and then you tell me if I'm doing something wrong. And this is like back in the 70s or something, and he said, within 4 hours, he gave me a $12 an hour job. And this is back like in the 70s, which is a lot of money. And when it's your thing and you find your thing, it becomes not natural to you. And again, it's like oh, but that dude's just making bagels. It's like, no, that is just like his expression of his soul. You know, and it becomes I
taste those bagels and I feel the same way.
Delicious, yeah, they're very delicious. Like I can taste it. And he's such a cool dude. It's like and then you meet people like that the essence shines through what they do, regardless of what it is. So when you start seeing that and you start seeing it in others, right, it's like there's something that happens that puts you in attunement with things that you wouldn't. It's like when I was when somebody was talking to me about, hey, I know that I heard you're a big Bob Marley fan. Did you watch the movie? And I said no. And I'm like, why not? He said, have you watched the documentary? It's like, no, not really. Have you watched the One Love concert? It's like, no. When he was singing, jamming, and I'm like, no. And I was like, let me show you this video. Show him the video where Marley is like, as the people, show them right, show the people. And then the poof, there's lightning. And I'm like, what the? I get chills every time I think about that because that man was living from that essence, and nature aligns with him. And then it's like, it's just awe-inspiring. Right. And again, that's something big. Right. But in our lives, we could see that in little things if we allowed ourselves to live from there. Like you called me the other day. Right. And you said, man, you're always seeing these animals. Right. And then you called me and it's like, oh, my God, I saw that eagle the other day.
It wasn't an eagle. It was those two birds.
No.
that you were talking about.
It was the eagle.
It was the eagle?
That is the national bird of Mexico.
Yeah. Okay.
And we have it around here. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yes. Then I did see the eagle. Yeah. Two of them. On a fence that I never, ever noticed.
And when you start looking at the stuff, and again, oh, that's bullshit. That's whatever.
I was like, what? What the? I was mind blown by that because I'm like, I'm an animal's whisperer too. I'm just kidding.
And again, I know that we're rambling. No,
we are.
But it's the beauty. It's like when you start recognizing the beauty in you, then you start seeing the beauty in other things. Right?
Absolutely. That's a great way to put it.
And that's like, and again, I know what a lot of people say, whatever. That's just, this motherfucker's full of shit. It's like, that's too poetic and whatever.
No, it's not actually. But I mean, it is, but it's not.
But again, unfortunately, and this is what I'm learning, and I'm being reinforced for better or worse, and for whatever reason, this is what I see, and this is who I am.
That's it.
And if you don't like it, then, I mean, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do?
Just do the moonwalk backwards.
I mean, like
whatever it is.
And this is kind of like the. But again, I could say this now, and I tell people all the time. It's like, oh man, you're so great at this. It's like, yes, but you haven't seen the darkness. You didn't sit. You weren't sitting with me when my head was between my legs, crying my eyes out, lost and confused, right?
Yeah.
And you didn't see how people try to help me, and there was no avail, right? And there was nothing like that. Nobody, because that's something that is part of your journey.
Yep.
And that what we're trying to do with all this is to be able to minimize that pain, but also realizing that I can't do it for you. I could show you some things, we could show you some things, but I can't do it for you. Sorry.
Exactly, which is what we're going to go into next.
Yes.
Is just kind of, I just wanted to kind of just share personal, because I want to keep it personal.
Yes.
Strategies.
Yeah.
That might work for other people, might not work.
And I've been thinking about this. So the first strategy, we are actually working on that right now. So we're going to share this strategy. It's something that we learned from two things, from Coach for Life, which is a school that I went to for life coaching, and also from some of the studies that I've done on some other stuff that involves autosuggestion, right? So in the next, I said like maybe 2 to 3 weeks, we're going to be putting out this this little ebook, this little manual for you. Number one, it's a simple exercise of projection, discovering the essence and the way that you contribute, right? And once you get that, the idea is to use suggestion, right? And what suggestion is, it's not positive thinking. It's creating a statement and reminding yourself. This is nothing new. This is the basis of what do you call it? Manifestation is all about. The essence of a lot of esoteric and a lot of hermetic principles is it is the basis of cognitive behavioral therapy. You replace one thing with something positive. Right. And what you do with this statement once you get it is that you repeat it to yourself in the morning, and you think about that statement and how that makes you feel for 5 minutes in the morning. Right. And then you do the same thing in the evening. Right. And if you do that consistently, and if you allow yourself to do it consistently, even if it feels like it's bullshit, but you do it, right? And you saw me when I started, right? And now it's like it's mandatory that I spend, and now I spend like an hour, like, right? Right? So you start there. So you start doing that in the morning, in the afternoon, right? So that's the first exercise, and we're going to put that out in the next couple of weeks so that you could just have access to it. And
got to give us an email though.
Oh wow! Hey, quid pro quo. Right?
So what else? I think one of the things for me that's really helped me is that I've gotten into. I do the auto suggestion. I do have my own little thing that I say to myself, and I got this from you. I do in the morning, I'll say it and then I repeat it. And then I often find myself repeating it during the day. Yes. And that's excellent that you bring that up, right? Okay. Because this is what happens, right? Because once you start realizing that you're doing it in the morning, man, I feel good. Yeah. And then you do it in the evening, I feel good. When your mind and your emotions start working against you, that's what you do. Yeah. Cognitive behavior therapy. Yep. That's what that is. It really is there. It really helps too. And what you do is that you find yourself saying it to yourself and going back to the place where you start feeling. What it does, because it forces you to pause. Yes. When you're saying that. Even if you're going from one thing to the next, it forces you to take a deep breath and say it very quickly. And you're like, okay, I got this. And it's almost like that, you think you're going off balance. You're like, oh, okay, it stabilized me. I'm good now. Yeah. So that's helpful. And also I've been getting back into habitually meditating. Yep. And meditation for some people, they say that it's difficult. I can't, the thoughts and that's the whole point. is for you to sit in the stillness, to connect with your authentic essence and allow yourself to come to a place where you feel those emotions, those things, those feelings. And a lot of these meditations, if you find good ones, which you can find really good ones. I follow the Boho on YouTube. Excellent meditations. They have 10-minute, 15-minute. They got a 14-day one. So if you want to challenge yourself, they have lots of different ones. And that's led me to find other ones that have been very productive for me and helpful.
Yeah.
And they really do center me. As soon as I'm done, I get out of that and I just feel so like alive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I'm going to say something right now. I know that we're kind of like running out of time, but this is something that we're going to talk about this idea of what spirituality really is, right? Because I feel that there's two schools of thoughts. There's a Western way of thinking, right, which is where we're born. We're Westerners, right? But there's also an Occidental or Eastern way of thinking, right? And there's a certain level of escapism in which we are looking for, right? And that a lot of people that teach meditation, I think, alludes to that escapism in which nothing will bother you or affect you, right? And that's there's a form of Buddhism in which you are detached from the world, right? I don't believe in that, right? Because when you are not involved in practicalities of life, nothing changes, right? So spirituality is an active sport. It's an active participation in your surroundings, in your environment, in the way that you lead people, in the way that you impact the people around you and the culture around you. So spirituality has taken a different definition for me as well as meditation has, right? Because meditation, it's understanding how your mind operates. Your mind operates by what kind of pictures and what kind of things you are saying. And so if you're just letting it, right, it will just do what it has been trained to do, which is do and say the things that it has always done and say. So one of the things that I've learned, again, we'll talk about the whole spirituality thing and the concept of how to use that time, is that you should never allow your mind, right, to be without focus, because you're self-conscious, right? It's the only way in which you could affect your subconsciousness. Now I'm getting into like something different. We'll talk about that later. I'm just planting the seed right now.
Okay.
But the reality is, and this is what I've learned in the last few years and in practice, and I've seen the change, is that you have to use your mind and your thoughts to be able to change the way that you feel, right? And once you start doing that, then your environment begins to change, because it comes from the inside out, not from the outside in, right? You're not, I don't believe that maybe you could. Maybe that's possible, right? That you could levitate, or you could transcend all this stuff, and that's great. Hey, listen, right? But we're Westerners, and we are participants in evolution, and that's something that we need to keep in our minds. That for better or worse, whatever you think about the West, and whatever you think about that idea of creation, right? We are a part of that. Disengagement from that, I think, is no bueno.
Well, it depends on, what you're looking for, but
precisely. But
I would agree, to some extent. But yeah, I'm glad you planted a seed for future episodes and what could possibly be in our workbook if you give us your email address.
Oh God, you're funny.
But I wanted to say that I know that people are going, oh, of course, the meditation, the typical whatever. But I think it's really like, because I felt the same way, like, okay, fine, yeah, I'll just meditate, I guess. But when you get into that position where you're just like, when you get into a place where you're like, all right, I can no longer live this way, you have no choice but to give in and find some way to and to connect to your authentic essence.
And to take a little bit back of what I said, that's what I found. Right? You got to find what works for you.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
And that's
meditation doesn't work for everybody. Journaling. Journaling is a great way to let go of.
I always suggest it with everybody that I work with. Breathing
exercises.
And again,
some people will do things like they take cold ass showers in the morning. No. This is a practice where they will go and they're like, okay, I'm going to do the last 2 minutes of my shower and I'm just going to stand under cold water. And I will
Bravo
tell you,
for them.
I did that. Not for me, but it works for some people. So yeah, anyway. All right. So I just wanted to, you know, sort of share the things that you and I are doing and be real with people. And I think that we did that. So
I mean, and I think that a lot of the stuff is really, you know, you could spend time on strategies, business strategies, and all that stuff. But the reality of the fact is, and this is what we've learned, and at least what I'm coming to accept is like, this is what I am. Yeah. And this is what I'm trying to be.
Exactly.
And from all my mistakes and everything that I've done and all the lessons that I've learned, I'm fortunate enough to be able to come up with a perspective.
Yep. That's so true.
That feels good to me, right? Yeah. And that's the part that I hold on to, you know. And that's all that I could be. I mean, I don't know what else to be. Except that.
And also I think what we're trying to establish, or what we've been trying to establish, but what we're continuing to try to do is to establish community where people feel like, okay, those are two people that are talking about this openly. They're being vulnerable. You know, I want to join that community. I want to be a part of that. And I'd love to hear from our audience, our viewers, our listeners about their difficulties. And maybe they have suggestions that will work for other people. Yeah. I mean, I'm always open to listening to other people and what they do to combat these types of issues.
Yeah,
you know?
and this is why we do the interviews, right? Because in the interviews, it's like, you know, it's not just to show how well people are, but also like, I mean, the interview from last week, Khalid Banner is a young man that I've been working with for almost a year now. And just to see his vulnerability and his willingness to grow and change and expand and let go of the past, you know, I respect that. Yeah. I respect that a lot, you know, and I admire that a lot. Yeah. And there's so many people out there with that same desire not to be so much. And again, it's easy to say, to be caught up in the matrix and all this stuff. Those are easy things to say. But again, it's not that it's good or bad. It's that that in the midst of all that, we have to find and live from where we are. And consequently, we impact it. You know, and it evolves, right? So, for instance, you know, the let's say the founding fathers of America, or the founding fathers or mothers of any society, right? They started living based on principles that came from them, and those people, right, eventually brought us where we are. But if they were inauthentic, if they were living from a different point of view, we wouldn't be where we are. Right. So it's almost like we have a responsibility to live from there. That's why we focus on life, leadership, and culture. Because when you live from there, and again, it doesn't have to be that you're transforming the world. I think that's kind of silly because you can't control it, right? But if you are changing your life and living really good, ultimately you will affect the people around you. Living authentically. It's inevitable. Yeah. It is inevitable that you will positively affect the people around you when you're living from your true essence. You know, this is, you know, in the book that's coming out, I'm going to share a story of how I was taught that at a very young age, and I've tried. But, you know, but life happens too, you know, and you got to go through your trials and your tribulations and your fault and all that stuff in order to accept that, you know. But that, in a nutshell, understanding what we talked about, the more that you begin to get attuned with that, the more your self-doubt it's going to go away. It's just going to start breaking apart.
I don't think I'll push back on that too. I don't think it will ever go away, but I think that you will start to have mechanisms in place for yourself that you can use in those moments. That's what I was trying to say earlier, is that I had this moment yesterday and I cried. And I was pissed and I did all that. And then I was like, all right. And I'm good. I got this. And I got my head on straight. It was like really weird. And I was good the rest of the day. I felt good. And I felt really good today, you know? So I think you're going to have your small setbacks, but as you continue to evolve and continue to get stronger with this whole process and understanding your authentic essence and being in alignment with that, it gets easier to navigate those self-doubt feelings.
Yeah. And we'll get more into those. There's a lot of great things that could potentially happen when you start living from there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If these themes resonate with you, how can ASQ offer additional insight into navigating the search for deeper meaning and purpose? We encourage you to visit asoulsquest.com for more information. Stay tuned for more exciting topics.